If I sound a little too charitable about this movie, it's because it's the first good Spider-Man movie we've had in the last 13 years. Hey everybody, how's it going? So yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming is very, very good. Again, like I said in the beginning, I'm not sure if that's because the last couple of Spider-Man movies we got were so bad. The last good Spider-Man movie was Spider-Man 2. Okay, so what did they get right? Tom Holland, I think he was great for the part. He was a great Peter Parker, and he was a great Spider-Man. I'm one of the few people that didn't care for, what's the guy's name again? Tobey Maguire, which, by the way, apparently, if the internet rumors are to be believed, and I always believe internet rumors, apparently he's a dick. That's what I read. Anyway, Tobey Maguire, didn't care for the guy that much. Andrew Garfield, I wanted to like him, but I think he got Peter Parker all wrong. First of all, he was too cool. Peter Parker's not supposed to be that cool. And as Spider-Man, he was kind of cocky. He was kind of arrogant, and no, didn't feel right for me. Tom Holland, on the other hand, I think he has that perfect balance of, you know, the quips and everything like that, which is pretty much a Spider-Man staple. But as Peter Parker, he's actually very insecure of himself, and it worked for me. It worked for me in levels that the other two guys just didn't. Marvel was really smart here in skipping the origin story. At this point, I guarantee you, I can call my Brazilian mother on the phone right now and ask her what's the origin story, what's Spider-Man origin story. She's probably gonna know at least kind of the, I mean, I would call her right now, but she's actually in Brazil, so I don't want to make an international call for the sake of a video bit, but I guarantee you, she knows how Spider-Man became Spider-Man. We don't need to see that again in a movie because that's kind of like the most boring parts of the movie. That montage of the hero learning to be, something happens. First we see a little bit of their life before they were a hero. Then we see what happened, the catalyst that made them become a hero, whatever it was that gave them the inspiration to use whatever powers they gain to fight for good. Then there's a montage of them learning how to use the powers. Then there's the final confrontation with the villain. It's boring. It's the most boring part of any superhero movie, and for a lot of these guys, it makes sense to tell the origin story because I'm a comic book reader, so I'm familiar with all of these, but the general audience, they don't know who Ant-Man or Doctor Strange, they have no idea who those people are. It makes a lot of sense to tell the origin story for those characters. For Spider-Man, no. Especially when we've already seen that in movies. We've never seen the origin of Iron Man in a movie before, or Thor for that matter. It makes sense to tell those stories, not fucking Spider-Man. So they skipped that. That was very smart. It was very smart of Sony to finally let Marvel take the reins of the franchise. And the way it worked, if I understand correctly, Marvel was kind of like in the creative side of things, and Sony is handling distribution, and they get a bigger cut of the proceeds. I don't know exactly how it breaks down, and I don't even think, considering there's a whole word for this, Hollywood accounting, I don't fully know who's making what, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that Spider-Man exists in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's the right move for a lot of reasons. Although it looks like Sony didn't really learn the lesson because they're going to move forward with a Venom movie that doesn't take place in the MCU and has no ties to Spider-Man. So Sony, what the fuck? Are you allergic to money or some supporting cast? Great. Marisa Tomei, I thought she was excellent as Aunt May, and I know that a lot of people it didn't sit well with a lot of people that she's younger and hot, but then again, Peter Parker's like 15, so it would not make sense for him to have an octogenarian as an aunt. Think about it, it just doesn't work. So Marisa Tomei, I think, she was great. And I saw some people complaining that she didn't do a lot in the movie, but it's fucking Aunt May. Tony Stark shows up in the movie exactly when he needs to show up. From the trailer, you would think that it's Tony Stark and Spider-Man constantly chumming it up, and it's really not like that at all. He shows up exactly when he needs to, and I think he was a great addition to the story, and it really ties it together with everything else that's going on in the MCU. Also, having him in the movie solves a problem that the other movies didn't really touch on. How would a high school kid make a costume that looked that good? The only other way for this to make sense, if they established that Peter Parker was a cosplayer before he got into Spider-Man-ing, so it would make sense for him to come up with a really cool costume. But this movie solves that by showing that Tony Stark made him a suit. And a lot of people didn't like all the high-tech aspects of the suit. I didn't mind it. I thought it made the movie a little busy, but it made sense in the context of the movie where Spider-Man is kind of learning how to be Spider-Man. And all of these extra things that Tony jammed into the suit they make his life more complicated at times because he's overwhelmed. One thing that I saw people complaining was this interpretation of Flash Thompson, and considering the ethnicity of the character in the movie, I'm not even sure I don't think they call him Flash Thompson. I think they call him Flash. He's an East Indian guy, and historically in the comics, Flash Thompson was this big white high school jock bully, and at first I thought it was weird that they went with that direction, but it made a lot of sense, especially because this is my opinion. I had this discussion with some people and they seem to disagree, but the bullies of today are not exactly like the bullies that we used to see, say, 10, 20 years ago. If those bullies even ever existed, or if there were a Hollywood thing. Because growing up, I didn't see people getting bullied like the movies tell you that people get bullied, like getting pushed around and beat up, straight up beat up. I never really saw that much. Bullies would bully people, from my experience, from seeing it happening. More like Flash does in this movie. It's more of a psychological warfare type thing. It's just constantly teasing, constantly picking on somebody. So it made a lot of sense. Like at first I thought, I was like, that guy doesn't seem intimidating to be Flash Thompson, to be the jock, to be the bully that Flash Thompson is in the comics and in the movies, but it actually makes a lot of sense. And as for changing his race, it didn't bug me that much. They do that a lot in comics, and I mean, it's who cares enough about Flash fucking Thompson to be upset that they replaced the white guy with an Indian guy? I mean, and then we have the Vulture. This is the first cinematic interpretation of the Vulture. If memory serves me right, when they were still talking about doing a fourth Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, John Malkovich, I thought, was attached to play the part, and the Vulture is a quintessential Spider-Man villain, and I think they did a phenomenal job with Michael Keaton. He brings this... See, the thing is, a lot of people complain that Marvel supervillains are kind of weak, and it's true. A lot of the supervillains are really flat and one-dimensional. They are evil, or they're greedy, and that's about it. Whereas the Vulture's doing what he does because he got screwed out of his job and his way of living, and he's doing that to survive. He's not an evil guy. He's being pushed to doing that because he has to provide for his family. He tried to do it straight, and they fucked with him, so he's fucking them back. It's easy to relate with that, and yeah, no, he's phenomenal in the role. I would even go as far as to say that that's probably the best Marvel villain we've seen yet. Maybe, I mean, Zemo in Civil War was pretty decent as well. You also had that the guy's not just evil, he's doing this to get revenge for, he had a very good reason to do what he was doing. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of really good Marvel villains, and I hope that this signifies the beginning of you know, see more of that. There's a plot twist around the end that I did not expect at all, and it made the stakes much bigger. You feel more that taking this guy down is not that clear cut. It's not a black and white situation. It's great. I thought it was a great story, and the fact that the stakes are not worldwide destruction, it's not global calamity. It grounds the movie a little bit more, because in, you know, these big pictures like Avengers or whatever, you know they're not going to lose. You know there's going to be more movies because you already know that these people sign up for more pictures in the future. So it's just a matter of running down the clock and seeing how exactly they're gonna save the world in the end. The movie has 2 after credits scenes. One of them is one of those like, oh, this is who Spidey is gonna be fighting down the line, probably, which is usually what you see in these after credits scenes. And then there's one in the very end. I don't want to spoil it, but it's some people were pissed. I thought it was a nice touch. But yeah, I loved everything about this movie. One of the things I saw people criticizing the movie for is that apparently it sags a little bit in the middle. Like, I totally get why they would complain about that, because for the most part, this is like a coming of age story. This is very much like a John Hughes kind of movie, and I mean, I think that's the right way to tell a Spider-Man story, to show his struggles. That's the reason why the character has been so popular. At least that's what anybody will tell you. That's why the character resonates with so many people from so many different walks of life. So I don't mind that. I mean, my brother has been a major Spider-Man fan for as long as, like, when we were kids. I was more of a Batman guy, like all my action figures, and I like the video games, like Batman video games more, and the comic. Like I was a Batman guy through and through. My brother has always been a loyal Spider-Man fan, and he told me he thought the movie kind of like the rhythm kind of sags a little bit in the middle with all this high school slash Peter Parker likes this girl but she doesn't like it. Like, I didn't mind it. That's how much I like this movie. That didn't bug me at all. If I have one complaint is that, and again, it's well contextualized in the story, in the universe that this story takes place, is that Spider-Man's tech suit was a little too busy maybe. He has a fucking drone, a parachute, he has the little wings under his armpits, which it's from the comics, it makes sense, but it's just, there's just too much happening, and again, makes perfect sense in the story they're trying to tell of him, like going, and this is not a spoiler because you see this in the trailer, Tony Stark gives him the suit and it has a lot of features that he's not able to use yet, and he kind of hacks the suit to be able to access these before he's ready, and that kind of blows up in his face because he's overwhelmed by all of these features. Again, makes perfect sense, but it's too much. It's just too much. And this is a complete side complaint from me personally. I had some people over, and I was talking about how, like, with Marvel superheroes, too many of them. The guy's not so much a superhero as much as he's a guy that owns this suit that does cool stuff. So you see that with a lot of both superheroes and supervillains in the MCU, like Tony Stark and Ant-Man and their respective villains. The fact that now the cinematic Spider-Man does all of this crazy shit because of the suit, when you think about it, his super abilities are actually pretty minor, right? Because he has super strength and he crawls on walls. And that's the extent of his powers. Most of what he's going to be doing, it looks like, if the movie goes in this direction with the super high-tech suit, is going to be because of a suit he's fucking wearing. Notice I didn't include Spider-Sense in that short list because, according to this movie, it's like he doesn't even have it. The previous movie does address this, and it's actually very interesting the way they do it, because when Tony first meets Peter, he shows the goggles that he wears, and he's like, how can you even see through this? And Peter says that when he's in Spider-Man mode, his senses are so heightened that he needs to kind of like voluntarily tunnel vision them a little bit so he can actually perform as a superhero. And in universe, this is a great explanation as to why Spider-Man's eyes move in the suit, and he can emote when he has the mask on. I remember thinking when the trailer for Civil War dropped and we saw Spider-Man for the first time and his eyes, like, you know, they move as he's... I thought it was a little bit goofy, but again, in universe, makes sense, and it makes for a great effect that we can actually see him emoting with the mask on. So yeah, it works for me. Anyway, that's how I felt about the movie. Let me know what you thought. I mean, considering how well it's been doing with critics and the audiences, I imagine your opinion is kind of in line with how I felt about the movie. But yeah, that's all the time I have for today. If you're new here, consider subscribing, leaving a comment. You know how these things are. There's this social contract, right, between us. Like, I talk about all this shit, and then you, like, say that I'm an idiot in the comments and upvote me or downvote. This is not Reddit, why am I saying upvote? Anyway, you know what to do. I'll see you guys next time.